interesting times we're living in, especially today, right now, as the narrative starts to shift to climate change and global warming, and it's all geoengineering that's pushing that narrative. So my role is getting uh, a little more exacerbated, and I'm just trying to figure out what to do about it and how to play it all out and win this battle. It's going to be a long journey.
Well, yeah, and you've been at it for a good while now, and I applaud you for that. It's been a long time since you've been on this show. I remember hearing about you a few years ago, watching Frankenskies, and noting the work that you've done, and then having you on my show. I think it was in like 2018. You were actually one of the very first guests I ever had on here. But it's good to have you back on. We do have a lot to talk about because, like you said, a lot has happened since we last spoke, including a globalist attempt to destroy humanity. But let's start with a little bit about your background, since it's been so long. And for the audience that's not familiar with you, what was it that really opened your eyes to some of the aspects of reality that we're being deceived by, basically?
Yeah, thanks for asking. And hello, everyone. My name's Matt Landman. You can find me on Facebook, Matt, Landman, and I've got my movie Frankenskies that it used to be really easy to find, but now that I've lost my YouTube channel and censorship is rampant, it's not so easy, but you can go to frankenskies.com where I've got it there forever alive and well. But me, I've lived the life of a pretty normal dude. I mean, what I classify as normal. You know, I've had like 40 different jobs and stuff. I guess most normal people like get a job and stick it and, you know, get the mortgage and stay in one place. I've traveled a lot and moved around a lot. I grew up in Virginia, but I kept leaving because I didn't want to be there and I didn't really know where I wanted to be. And my journey of like waking up, you asked kind of, it sounded like, well, I lived in Northern Virginia, just right outside of Washington, D.C. when 9/11 happened. So that hit really close to home. Dulles Airport is like 10 minutes from my house, 15 minutes from my house. And DC is another like a half an hour from where I lived. And you know, like the plane got hijacked from Dulles Airport right there and flown into the Pentagon right over there. And my girlfriend at the time went to Pace University, which is in Manhattan. And it's right there next to the World Trade Center. It's dwarfed by the towers. It was, at least. And the phone lines were down that whole day, and I was calling my girlfriend all day, and I was really worried and upset. And when I learned through Dylan Avery, thank you, Dylan Avery, for the documentary Loose Change, and through the Zeitgeist movies, and one of my first friends, Keith Patton, random friend, he was passing out Zeitgeist DVDs to pizza delivery men and stuff like that. This is back in like, you know, the year 2001 and whatnot, and 2003. What have you. So it's been an interesting, slow and steady ride for me personally. And I never knew any of this deep stuff like vaccines or chemtrails or even fluoride. I didn't know much about any of it. Slowly after 9/11, I learned about fluoride. And then I ended up pursuing my life dream of learning about filmmaking and going to school for it and getting some proper education on filmmaking, which I never knew I was going to be a documentary filmmaker. I thought I was going to be maybe an actor or a director of like narratives or whatever. I didn't know, but I never thought I'd do this. It kind of worked out pretty well because I got a master's degree in business. So I've got a little bit of business background, and I worked as a finance analyst, and I worked all these different jobs in business. And now that's helped me along with my EMF protection clothing line and whatnot that I have, Spero, Spero, which is a Latin word. It's translated to hope. We can talk about that later. But what happened was I went to school finally again. Okay, so I went to Virginia Tech. I got a bachelor's of science in marketing and management. And right after I left, there was that crazy school shooting. And later I learned about MK Ultra and all that sort of stuff. And so all of that is close to home. You know, all these realizations and aha moments and eye openings and third eye openings or whatever, like these things they were all there the whole time. Even the sky was there the whole time. You know, it's unreal. And I was duped when 9/11 happened. I was scared to death. And I was always afraid of needles. I never got blood. I never gave blood. I never got the flu shot or anything like that. But I never thought it was because of anything aside from like just this deep, innate, like, you know, gut wrenching. Like I hate those things. So either way, I got a job on a farm after I graduated from school the second time, because I got the business degree. I didn't have the film background. There was no film school to go to in Virginia, and I wanted to get in-state tuition and whatnot. You know, that's the life of someone that doesn't have too much money. And I ended up going to school again, Cal State, Humboldt, at the very northern top of California, very rural community. And there I got a master's in business. And I'm so glad I went to school before all this nonsense, because everything's so online now, and you got to show your COVID certificate of inoculation or whatever to even go to school and be around humans now. And everything's changed. I'm so glad that I got to do that. It was such an amazing opportunity for me. I graduated top of my class. You know, I really worked hard then because I wanted to give it all I could. And while I was getting the MBA, I basically got a film degree as well on the side. And that's where I learned about filmmaking. And so I got out of school and I worked in the office again, and it sucked. And I got the opportunity to work on an organic farm growing all sorts of vegetables. And I mean, you name it, potatoes and pumpkins and squash and all this. And I took the job. I left the cubicle, the office. I left it for the last time, I guess, in retrospect. And I mean, like I said, I've had 40 freaking jobs, restaurant, real estate, you name it. I've worked all these different things trying to find my way where I would like to, you know, find my niche and be happy and be okay with like having people tell me what to do, which I'm not. So in the end, I'm on a farm and it was great. I got grounded. I learned about the elements. And at the age of like 34, I guess it was around then, 2014-ish or 2014 or 13, I was around 33 or 34. And day one on the farm, and I'm almost done. Thank you for listening to this story. Day one on the farm, I learned that potatoes grew potatoes. And a lot of people are kind of laughing, and a lot of people are like, wait, what? And maybe you've heard me say this before, and I'm sorry to be a broken record, but guess what? I didn't know that. And I thought I knew everything. I'd gotten a master's degree in business, and I'd, you know, gone to this great public school. They said it was the best in the country, and I did a lot, and I thought I'd known things. I didn't know anything, man. They'd kept that from me. I didn't know there's different varieties of lemons. I didn't know hardly anything, but I thought I knew so much. So on day one, I'm like, wait, you just put the potato in the ground and it grows a bunch of potatoes. So that's what the potato is trying to do in my pantry, is trying to grow a bunch of potatoes. They're trying to limit that information from me. So I am reliant on the grocery store and the system and capitalism. I got to go pay for the potatoes when I could easily have a flourishing potato garden. Over the years, I could learn how to do these things on my own and cultivate these things on my own and grow fruits and all these things. I mean, the first time that I saw an apple tree, I literally was blown away, bro, because I thought apple trees had like 4 or 5 apples on them, like how I drew when I was a kid. I had no idea how abundant the world was, even as an adult. And on the farm, I was grounded, and I started to just get muscles and get it in my body. And this one day, it was the end of the season, and we were supposed to get this not catastrophic, but this downpour of rain for like a week. And we were excited about this almost flood of rain, because we're in the midst of like a 5-year drought, which was catastrophic. And California, the whole state, was hopeful for this jet stream of moisture that had somehow not been hitting California for the half decade. The weather said 100% chance of rain for a week. The amphibious creatures came out from underneath my house, like salamanders and frogs, and everyone was excited. The plants, the trees, the redwoods, the energy was, it's about to dump rain, and these black storm clouds were coming off the ocean. I can like see the ocean pretty much from where the farm was, where I worked. I could hear the waves from where I worked in this rural farm community where I worked. And on a daily basis, I would see one plane flying over. It was a very like rural atmosphere. There's not much air traffic. I'm in the middle of nowhere. And on this day, I saw something that I'd actually like. I shelved the memory, which is very interesting. And we have to talk about that for a second, about the psychology of the human mind, because we see things, we don't know how to compute them. We don't have a reference point. Or maybe our reference point is some conspiratorial nonsense, propaganda, misinformation, social engineering campaign crap off of the New York Times, USA Today, or like some, you know, media conglomerate, and they're telling you how to think about something. So then when you're first introduced to something, you don't recognize the truth in it. But what I witnessed on this farm, I'm out here harvesting pumpkins because we're worried these pumpkins are going to rot in the field and Farmer Paul is going to lose his ass. We're worried about the harvest of the year because the rains are coming early. Usually they come in November and it's October, early October. So these big storm clouds are coming off the ocean. It's going to rain for a week. And we're out there harvesting. I've got rain jacket, rain boots on, and I'm working hard, you know. And on the edge of this storm, okay, as it rolled in, on the edge of the storm, these planes showed up, and they're flying in front of the storm, you know. And it wasn't just that they had arrived, which is a statistical anomaly, which is something to recognize, because oftentimes there's very sparse air traffic, and when there's a lot more air traffic, what are they doing? Let's take a look at the sky. Like, if you really look up, you can wake up just in that. But what I witnessed was these persistent linear cirrus cloud formations, these chemtrails coming out of the back of these jets, and about 20 or a dozen or 15-ish, you know, jets. They're zigzagging on the storm front, leaving these lines and going into the storm there. And as the storm came into this haze that they'd created, no rain dropped. For the whole week, no rain dropped, not a drop. And I thought nothing of it. I was just like, okay, weird, no rain, whatever. And I didn't think that there was a correlation or even a causation to the non-raining and the clouds. I mean, and the fake clouds, that the chemtrail clouds, the planes, the air traffic. So the memory just sat in my brain until like 6 months later, I was venting to a buddy on the phone in the East Coast about 9/11, and the kids nowadays don't know anything about it, because I had these young friends because I was going to college, you know, and I'm surrounded by youngsters, and I was in my mid-30s, and these kids are like 18. And when they were born, 9/11 had already happened. They had no reference point. They didn't have a girlfriend in New York and whatever like I had. And literally these people, normal kids out there in the world, they want to look these things up, and they do, and they Google it, and they quote, they say this: I've seen both sides of the story. And there's both sides of the story right there in front of them. They don't have any reason to pick one or the other. And they're just like, I can't choose, like, crazy conspiracy, government did it, or the other side. So I was venting to my buddy, and he said, yeah, you know, they weren't even born when 9/11 happened, but what about chemtrails? They're right in their faces, Matt. And I was like, what do you mean? Lorenzo, my homie back home that I grew up with. And he's like, you know, chemtrails. And he was like, you showed me freaking loose change and zeitgeist and all this stuff. You don't know what chemtrails are, dude? He's like, dude, go get on the internet, Google the word chemtrails. You'll know what I'm talking about. And I did. And the rest is basically history. Like, I got mad. I realized that the activists that were doing the movies and stuff like that, it took me a couple years to really put it together. But the opposition that existed, I realized that they weren't doing a good enough job. So I had to make Frankensteins and do the conferences and do all the stuff that I've done. But in the end, I learned that they maybe weren't doing a good job on purpose. And then the plot thickens and it gets really interesting and all this stuff. But there's no contrail. There's no little trail coming out of jets. There's no hot air coming out. Like, anytime you see anything, it's a chemical. They're mixing chemicals. There's a whole orchestrated ballet of stuff going on in the sky often. And they're messing with the weather. They're experimenting on a lot of stuff. They're causing fires and manipulating fires and droughts. And there's so much agenda at play with the global warming and geoengineering, weather modification, and climate change, yada da. Thanks for listening. But that's my like chemtrail thing in a nutshell. But it was so fascinating to see that I didn't know even the word. I didn't know anything. And all it took was one friend being like, dude, wake up. And here I am. You know what I mean? So that's the power of everyone out there in the world, I think.
Right. And this is one of the topics that kind of got me started down a lot of different rabbit holes as well. But since we last spoke, I've had several guests on with different, I guess, angles on the research into chemtrails. I've had different theories on why and how and what's the purpose and who's doing it and everything like that. One thing that I've possibly come to understand is that these atmospheric injections have multiple purposes. There's not just one, and it's hard to kind of to pinpoint what the agenda is, because there's probably multiple, and there's probably they probably think they're doing humanity good on this side, but it's really killing us on this side. So could you kind of break down, based on your research and what you find out, why they're doing this, what it exactly is they're spraying, and who's doing it, purpose,